Hello viewers, welcome back to Daily Retro. Today we're doing a little first impressions video on a brand new product. So this is the 8BitDo retro receiver for the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2. It also works with Windows if you've got the right adapter. And here is the item in question. So it's basically what you would plug into a controller port on a PS1 or 2, obviously, and then it's got a USB-C on the front, which comes with a very small cable to plug that into your PC for firmware updates, and that is actually quite important. So first impressions are kind of mixed, to be honest. So the product has not been working 100% for me out the box. I know a lot of people have had trouble getting hold of these on pre-order, so I do feel privileged to have one just as an ordinary user. I'm not a promoter or anything, I don't get anything early. But I was intent on getting these to sort of use an official Sony controller on my PlayStation 1 and 2, such as the DualShock 4, which is obviously one of the best sort of controllers that Sony has ever made. Much prefer it to PlayStation 5. But yeah, this is a receiver essentially for anything Bluetooth. It supports obviously the DualShock 4 and the DualSense and Nintendo Switch Pro controller, and there's a big list on the website, so I'll give a link for that in the description. But yeah, first impressions are kind of mixed. So I've been playing a couple of PS2 games, and the first thing I discovered upon opening my first game to play with it was Jak and Daxter on the PlayStation 2. So I'll flash this up as I go along and sort of chat through. So as I sort of opened up the game through OPL on the hard drive, it spun up, loaded fine, detected the controller, loaded my game no problem, and then I was playing for about 1 minute, and then suddenly the controller just sort of disconnected. And obviously when a controller disconnects on a PlayStation 2 game, it generally pauses the game, and that's exactly what it did. And then, but the controller on the DualShock 4 status light did not go off, which I thought was a bit strange. So what? It's not off. It's not out of battery. What's the issue? So I immediately sort of went into the pause menu, and it sort of unpaused itself. And I thought, oh great, I'll continue. And then the analog sticks didn't work at all. Neither analog stick worked. Not even the D-pad works. Really, really strange. So I was able to use other buttons, so I was still able to do other actions in the game even, so I'll show that obviously in the video. And it's quite strange, so I was able to use every other button apart from the directional sticks and the D-pad. Obviously that is a game breaker, you do need those games to play a 3D platformer. So that was kind of disappointing for the first sort of load up of this adapter. I have since upgraded the firmware. There's only been one edition at time of recording, and it does not work still. It's still exactly the same behaviour. 8BitDo do have a firmware updater tool for all their products. It's exactly the same tool for every other product, and it was well aware of what version I'd upgraded to. I even tried doing it on my second receiver to see if it's a faulty one, and that is not the case. Both behave in exactly the same way, which is kind of disappointing. So I thought, okay, we'll load up a different game and just see if it's the game. So next up I loaded up Colin McRae 2005, just a recent addition to the collection that I just had to hand. I do like Colin McRae games, so I know how they're meant to feel. So I loaded that up, and to my surprise, actually in-game it worked perfectly, but as I sort of went into the game, you got the message that the controller was disconnected, or the DualShock was disconnected, which is like a generic message you get on PlayStation 2 games when a controller disconnects. So I'd obviously seen it before and thought, again, that's very strange because the light hadn't gone, but that message disappeared within 1 or 2 seconds, and then the controller was completely usable again. So it seems to have similar behaviour to Jak and Daxter, where it could disconnect, but obviously it reconnected okay with Colin McRae and it didn't with Jak and Daxter. So it's been very strange. Actually in game it didn't make a difference to Colin McRae, so I was able to play a few stages even of Colin McRae, and absolutely no issues with any of the controls or buttons. If anything, that's where this starts turning into a good review, because the DualShock 4 playing on the PS2 was honestly one of the best controller experiences I've ever had on the PlayStation 2, and I have tested a lot of different PlayStation 2 controllers in my time. Obviously it makes sense to have a modern PlayStation 4 controller. Obviously the technology is going to be far superior to anything made in the past in the PS2 era, just because of the newer components. So from a playability point of view, when it works, it's absolutely fantastic. They are priced at £18, which I think is very reasonable for a UK price, considering it's a Chinese import. And yeah, I am very impressed with how well it played, but disappointed by the issues at the moment. I have been keeping 8BitDo updated. They've just got a support email you can email issues into, and I've told them about both those issues, both games, and they have since logged them, and they basically just said keep an eye out even for another firmware update. And as of time of recording, 2 days later, it's still not come up, but I know it can take quite a while to develop things like this. So it's going to be an interesting development. But the key point I would say is if you're thinking about buying one of these, I would hold off for a while. Or if you're going to buy it, just expect it to be sat on the shelf for a while until a firmware update comes along and fixes everything. It was a little bit disconcerting when I read the first update log for the firmware update, the only firmware update that's been done to it, and it basically just said now works with a memory card. Previously it didn't work with if you had a memory card plugged in, presumably because of power from the PS2 not being redirected enough to the controller receiver, which obviously needs X amount of power to actually work. So it's definitely had some weird bugs in its lifetime, and maybe it was released a little bit too early. But as I say, it's a mixed review, so you take away from it what you like. I'll leave a link for these in the description for where you can order them from. They're currently unavailable as of time of recording on Amazon UK. I pre-ordered them about a month before they came out at the start of September. So it was nice to get them on sort of the expected date. But yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed and probably not going to play with them too much until that firmware update comes out to fix all of these issues I've mentioned in this video. But if you've enjoyed this video and you like this sort of content, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hopefully see you soon for another video. Cheers guys.